probably very little reason for Maker to be on Ethereum, where really the Maker system is actually getting almost no security from Ethereum, because if you wanted to attack it, you could either attack the layer it's operating on, which is Ethereum, or you can attack the governance token. And if you could attack the governance token, you could basically corrupt the entire system. And so it's really not getting any security from Ethereum, but it ends up paying a lot to Ethereum. And gets nothing in return. And so that's an example where, I think there's this article from Paul Storsk, from years ago, where he has this thing called "All Smart Contracts Are DAOs." And I think I misunderstood that article for a very long time. But now that when I reread it recently, I think it actually clicked to me, where I disagree. Not all smart contracts are DAOs. Uniswap is a great example of something that actually is not a DAO whatsoever, but most smart contracts end up looking very much like DAOs. So whether it's Augur, if you want to attack Augur, you just got to attack the rep token. If you want to attack 0x, you just got to attack the 0x token. And so this premise, if proof of stake chains are DAOs, and so for most cases where you want a DAO that's controlling some sort of state machine, it probably makes sense to put it on its own chain. And so yeah, that I guess is one of the main differences, where it doesn't necessarily have to be for private chains, but it's for any chain that has a more specialized stakeholder set.
So the thing I don't get about Maker being on its own chain is that Maker needs collateral, and the only way you can control its collateral is by being on the Ethereum chain.
But that's why that's where things like IBC come in, where you can IBC over Ether. And yes, the thing is okay, yeah, but then the amount of collateral you have can't be greater than the value of MKR if MKR is securing that IBC connection. But that's already true in Maker. If you can't have the value of all the collateral in the MakerDAO system be greater than the value of MKR anyways.
I would disagree. I mean, for some security arguments, yes, but I think that's the attacks are more subtle than that. I mean, there's thresholds, there's constraints, there's a lot of things that constrain an attack. And I know the argument. If you take this argument all the way, you'll have things like, well, you cannot expect a transaction on, say, Bitcoin to be finalized until more has been paid in block reward than the value of your transaction, or something like that. But in practice, that's not what the threshold is, and I would say the same for MKR.
Could you describe what you mean there?
The full value of MKR can be lower than the amount of collateral that's being because I mean, bugs aside, which they did have, bugs aside, in principle, even if you have all of MKR tokens, you can still trigger global settlement, and so you don't get to steal all the collateral. I mean,
you can also screw with the oracles and destroy all the DAI, right? But you could do more than just trigger global settlement. In MKR, you could if you have enough MKR, you can change the oracle feed, and that you could actually destroy. You can print by doing that. There's all these weird attacks you could do where you can mint DAI out of thin air. Well,
they have this emergency oracle, which basically are not really oracles. I was reading through it and I thought it's an oracle used in case of emergency. But no, it's an oracle for the fact that there is an emergency. That's what the oracle represents, and that trigger global settlement. But and the thing I don't like is they view global settlement as costless, but it's not costless. You trigger global settlement, you force a lot of people to realize capital gains. That's the cost.
Yeah.
Or if you have a long-term contract with someone that's written in DAI, for example, then all of a sudden it's not as bad of a cost as stealing all the collateral, obviously, but it's still not something that's costless for people using the system.
So the premise that you have the reasons you believe that you want on-chain strong voting governance at the base layer of Tezos, do you think that argument also applies to almost every dApp on-chain?
I mean,
should Uniswap also have the strong on-chain governance that Tezos does?
Well, the curse of course is that I'm not a big dApp believer. So looking at the development of Tezos, it really starts primarily as a cryptocurrency, And then I look at, you look at Bitcoin script and you say like, well, Bitcoin script is kind of complicated and it's very, it's there's a lot of like frustrating limitations in what you can do and cannot do. It would be better to replace Bitcoin script with like a small typed stack language that, you can easily write a small program in. If you want to write like multi-sig and so on and so forth, you can write it. And that's basically like the idea behind Tezos, not running these large dApps. But somehow the curse is that if you have a smart contract platform that can write dApps, then somehow people are going to judge you based on dApps, saying like, oh, well, it means you need to have the apps with the token and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but like I don't fundamentally, aside from like a few exceptions, and we've mentioned Augur and we've mentioned MakerDAO, and like apart from that, I don't think there's a lot of interesting dApps to build.
What about Uniswap? Like, let's take a very specific example.
Like you say, Uniswap is almost not a dApp in the sense of like it's a it's so much more automatic than this. And so all the dApps I basically like, I think the good thing to do is to basically like put them at, like over time, just migrate them at the protocol level, just have your protocol handle it.